Hello and welcome, everybody. My name's Ken Dickinson. I'm the host of the Sailor's Message podcast, coming to you from Red Bluff, California. We're back again with Isabel Torres Carrillo, the third part of our conversation on the path this time. I'm so excited about this because, again, I had to recognize, and I have to be honest about it, there's about two things I remember from the path. Who am I and where am I going? And that's about it. I never put a lot of attention to it. I'm almost ashamed to say that, but that's the reality. And so this just gave me a lovely opportunity through Isabel's work here, rediscover the path. And there's a lot in there to unpack, I feel. So if you don't mind, you always have a provocative start to your writing. So you say, I'm looking for answers, right? That's how you start out your writing. So I just wanted to ask you about that. What made you write that down to open it up?
We started doing the disciplines. I had a teacher, I had a different process. And my master told me, beware of two things, impatience and expectations. And that's it. So when in in all these years, I've always believed that I was going to arrive to this point where I was going to become ceramic. You know, that clay, once it becomes
Yeah,
ceramics, it doesn't
yeah,
become clay anymore. And I always felt that I come back to being clay, a better clay, a purer clay. I'm not saying that it's all in vain, but that my expectations weren't being, I felt that I was missing something. I was doing something wrong. And so since Silo said, if somebody tells you that they have a problem, that they don't have faith, give them the book. Tell them to meditate on this book. And so I followed his advice and I'm meditating on the book. And so I'm meditating, and all these meditations, they bring new awareness. They bring a sense of my limits, my difficulties. It's like they kind of like place me in a more lucid way. Like I realize that there's a lot of things that I worry about that are really not important. And there are other things that I don't worry about, which are
this
actually more important.
that you should worry about.
But in a very soft, non-judgmental, but also very real way. You know, I feel that there's something that brings me a lot of internal clarity. Like it's
Yes.
this and not that.
And I think we all do that. We pick the book up and we battle with it however we can. But then you decide to not do this alone anymore. You say, together with other messengers, we decided to do a simple work together with these phrases. So you have this idea of remembering one per week, every morning when you wake up and every night before you go to sleep. Just tell us a little bit about how that started, your decision to work with others, not do it alone so much.
Sure. So, inspired by the principles that I found in Danny Zuckerberg's web
Yes.
a long time
Mentioned that
ago.
last time. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So inspired by that, after I did the principles, which took me a year, I did the path. I did the same thing by myself. You know, it's very simple. Wake up, remember the sentence, not,
Yes.
meditate about it. Just remember it and go to sleep and remember it. And I remember that from that experience, there were many interesting insights, but the most important one was, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but there's one sentence which is, learn to recognize the signs of the sacred inside of you and outside of you.
Yes.
Something like that. I remember I had left work and there was a bridge near where I used to work. And I'm crossing the bridge. And all of a sudden, like halfway into the week, because I did it by week, I have to stop. You know, when they say the recognition, that it's like
Yeah.
1 second. For 1 second, which seemed to last a year, I felt that everything was sacred. Because I'm looking for these signs, is it this? Is it
Yeah.
that? Is it this? Was there on the bridge. I felt everything. And it was like such an overwhelming, but it wasn't like I fell on the floor. It was actually very soft, but it was so deep, so deep. And then, like it does, that state of being kind of faded away. And then we were fast forward to the pandemics. And I don't remember, we were doing something together with this group of people, and somebody suggested, why don't we meditate on the message, on the path? And
Yes.
so the idea of, the phrase in the morning and the phrase in the evening, so that was the same. But we also introduced a weekly kind of like touching base.
You said we make a summary of what came up during the process.
Exactly. And we did this in a very simple way with a WhatsApp group. And thanks to Nicole and her work with the asking, I had realized something which I hadn't considered before, which was before you start, you ask yourself, why are you doing this? What are you looking for, right?
Yeah.
And then halfway and at the end, you go back and you kind of try to see if the meditations have answered this initial search.
Yeah.
So these two things were included. And also the fact of doing it with other people. I don't remember. So we started doing this thing, which was reminiscent of what I had done by myself, but now we're in a group. Plus, there's these two moment touching base. So when I began, I wrote down what I was looking for. And then with each sentence of the path, I kind of asked myself, what was happening. And there was another thing that we did there, which we used the path as in the commentaries, because there's the book of Silo's message, and then there's the book of Silo's commentaries, which said, this is my interpretation, you do your interpretation. But we decided to use his interpretation.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, because I went to that too. I went to the commentaries because I realized I was pretty ignorant of the whole path, other than those two I told you about that I remembered. And then he is very compositional to start with. He breaks it down, like there's 8 that start, and then there's 9 later, and the 8's divided into 2 sets of 4. So I love that kind of structure, Oh, now I'm on top of it. I can figure this out. And it's a very interesting technique. I call it the I have a dream technique, which Martin Luther King, I always remember this. He starts out, I have a dream that one day I have a dream. And he keeps saying, I have a dream. And in Silo, he says, if you believe. So it's a rhythmic, poetic way of creating an effect in you. I love that. Winston Churchill, I remember, did it with, we shall fight them on the beaches, and you always remember, we will never surrender. That's the ending part of it. And then Silo uses that. At times I have grasped a distant thought. At times I have done this and that. And in the healing of suffering, he talks about the great enemies of humanity, the fear of death, the fear of loneliness, and he's driving it home. He drives it kind of into you with that rhythm there. So I got sort of fascinated by his style of writing that and how he did it. And then I realized really it's a situational analysis, that first part. And the whole theme he tells us is about coherence. So it's all about now coming out of the inner look, you're going into the world, carrying this into the world coherently. That's the way to advance. So you got me thinking about it like that. Then you said, well, what happened? How did the summaries go, would you say?
It was very interesting because I don't think everybody did it. Not everybody did the summaries. It wasn't like we were a group that everybody did their homework.
Right.
I know I did it. And I know there's like 2 lessons I learned with this experience. One, which is very mundane, and one, which is very profound. Talking from the point of view of the group dynamics, I realized that we were not always in tune. We weren't like an orchestra. Some people went faster, some went slower, some people gave up. But there were two things that were very interesting. First is that I think in general, some of the times we thought that we were going to do 1 week per sentence, per
Yes.
phrase, but actually sometimes we did 2 because sometimes it wasn't enough. After
Oh,
a week, we still had a feeling that no, I haven't really been able
you
to,
need to go further with it. Right.
yes, that we hadn't really
Yeah.
been able to connect with.
Yeah.
And also sometimes it was very interesting that in sharing these, and sometimes people shared things that weren't rational. I mean, it wasn't like my experience with the principal. Sometimes people shared a song or a story or a poem, but somehow we could understand each other. And actually, somebody else would say, oh, either there was something similar that they were dwelling on, or that thing had produced a breakthrough. So that was very interesting that it had its own dynamic, its
Yeah.
own order, which wasn't a classroom, no kind of
No.
order.
No, it was, yes, a little bit more in the moment, spontaneous, was it?
Yes, but I
No.
would say nonverbal.
Yeah.
No, it was a
Yeah.
nonverbal kind of understanding.
And well, here you're saying it wasn't linear.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about there.
Yes.
And you finish in a few months. And then you say, at the end of the work, however, I'm amazed because I had underestimated the scope of your teaching. So, just to remind everybody, you are really writing this as a personal letter to CeeLo. Your whole work is like you're talking to him. So, to discover that I find myself in an inspired, intense, and prolonged state of inspired consciousness, in the same mental atmosphere as other works with the profound. And how did that kind of happen or operate on you that you got in that state?
Exactly. And this is exactly where this bifurcation that I
Yeah.
told you about happened. So, on one hand, on a deeper level, for me, the path is a path of purification,
Okay.
of the mental, of the mental. I'm going to call it like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what is purifying is the way that the reality is being constructed, the way that you're constructing the reality.
Yeah.
And there is, in a way that, like you said, is coherent, it is integrated.
Yeah.
And it puts, at least it put me in front of my mental limits. And
Yeah.
even though I wouldn't be able to tell you, well, Ken, I did this and no, it wasn't like that. But just
No.
feeling this limit and trying to, without, pushing through, but just trying to, it's almost like I tried to disappear so that I could move. I was trying to connect with these ideas and I couldn't. I felt like a mental block, but instead of, ramming against the block,
Yeah.
I tried to disappear so that I could move forward, and experience what he was saying. And I think that there's a structure. I mean, I haven't really analyzed it. I know that the experience of the meditation with the path with my friends was to the equivalent of
Yes.
my experience with the discipline, which I did by myself
Yeah.
mentally. I
Yeah.
wasn't exactly a kind of like in the beginning, a kind of a euphoria. If I believe, if I don't believe, and then the indifference and me and the world, and then there's the part where you learn, so learn this and learn that,
Yes.
and a lot
Right.
of frustration.
Yeah.
I'm violent, and I don't treat people like I would like to, and all these
Well, yeah, because he pushes you towards the world. If you want to be
exactly,
coherent, you've got to get out there and start giving to others in a way.
and find the way of connecting with others and not becoming
Yeah.
resentful and changing yourself somehow, managing
Yeah.
better your emotions and your actions. And then there's this part of who am I, where am I going, which is so destabilizing,
Yeah.
because you're kind of getting kind of lost there. And then there's the part of the asking and the gratitude, which is also very interesting because there it also challenged some of the assumptions, the beliefs, the core beliefs I have from my landscape of formation, which is when you are happy, you give thanks. And when you are sad, you claim, this happiness is yours. It's your rights. It's not like a concession. It's not
No,
something that the gods are
no.
giving you or randomly. No, it's your right. You claim it.
Did you have that from your landscape of formation? You had
Yes.
that in play?
Yes, of course. That you're here to suffer.
Okay, sure. Oh, but it's the other side of it, right? Yeah. It's the Catholic version.
Exactly. And not
Yeah.
that there is happiness inside of you for you to claim when
Yeah.
you need it, it was
Yeah.
like your birthright.
Yes.
And then we come to the last 3 sentences of the path, which are so interesting. And I want to get back to them in the end, because that was also very much a part of what I came back to while I was in Mikebuda. Kind of like I circled back to them. Yes.
Okay.
So we have this thing, and at the end of this reflection with the path, I was so inspired, but I wasn't inspired in the sense that I was euphoric. Like, from the way I understand inspiration now, is a state of being where reality is so interesting. It has so much volume, and things are so connected, and there's so much that I don't understand, and because it's so immense, but I am so delighted to be alive and to be part of this incredible, fascinating.
Would you say like your space expanded, right? In a way.
Expanded, but it has volume. It's not flat and big. No, it's volume and full of layers. And it's so dynamic. And it lasted quite a long time. And we were in the middle of the pandemic, which was a moment that was very tense, and especially here in Italy. And whereas I'm like, well, that's just so cool. And I see things differently, and I experience things differently. And what really became up, because this is something maybe that is more referred to Siloists, and maybe somebody who's listening to this for the first time cannot relate to this and will think that I'm crazy. But what happened was that when I first came into contact with Silo's teachings, I told myself, this man is a genius and he is enlightened, and I am going to follow him. But at a certain point, something that he did only a few times in his life, he opened to the people that were involved in his teachings and activities, the disciplines, which was a very specific form, and maybe deep form, of meditation.
Yes.
In order to achieve a transformation of the person meditating. And then after he died, this possibility ended because, other things can happen, but the school is part of it and the master are one. Then you can do other things, but it's something different. And I'm not saying bad or worse. No. Just,
Yeah.
And so he said, before dying, he said something that the access to the profound, that there was the message. I don't remember the exact words, but he said, for the access to the profound, there's the message. And of course, I believed him.
Yes.
But that had not been my experience. So I kind of like took him on faith. I said, well, So when I had the experience that it's true, that if I do something, and because the key word in this meditation that we did that was called the disciplines, is the discipline. Is the fact that you do it every day. If you feel like it, if you don't feel like it, if you do it well, if you do it badly, if you're inspired, if you're desperate. That is what I think my experience says is what creates this possibility of overcoming the mechanical way of living. And so something that for me is so important is that doing something so simple, so unassuming, could bring somebody into such a different connection to their existence and to other people and to the meaning of life and to what happens after. And so one thing that I wish I could transmit to other people is you don't need fireworks. You don't need it. It's that humble, patient, and steady work that is going to change your life. It's not fasting, going inside a
No,
cave,
going to the
doing
mountains for a month and all that.
getting together hundreds of people, because we were a group of 10 people.
There is an element of discipline in the path, you know, when he says, do not let a day go by without, right? Do not let a day go by without giving an answer to yourself.
Yes.
So in that vein, you found yourself in this very inspired, intense, prolonged state in the same mental atmosphere as other works with the profound until the state fades and the memory remains. And then you lead us into the next paragraph, and so I fail. Is that just, you know, time, how we get in these inspired states, and then a month later you go, oh God, where am I again? Life arrives to you and you're not responding like you were before somehow. Something took you down or shifted or changed or whatever.
Yes, but I'm going to use the word failure because it was the failure of my expectation. I expected that the state would never fade, and it did. And that's a very important point because maybe I'm going to regret what I'm saying now. In Italian, there's a sentence there's a saying that says, here I'm saying it and here I'm denying it. You know, that what you're saying, you could deny it at the same time. So I'm not sure about what I'm saying, but inside of me, there's somebody who wants to triumph. I want to win. And look at me. I did it.
Okay.
And even in a very compassionate way, you know, I am the living proof that it can be done. And
Yeah.
so brilliant and so whatever. And I so wish that I could offer this. You know, I am a good pupil, Silos.
Yeah.
Follow your steps, and here I. But who cares? Because this is my main. Actually, there's more because there's the final part of the path, and maybe it's time to connect these together. Can I, or did you have? Did
Yeah,
you
well,
want to take?
all I was going to add to that was you transformed that, and you said I fail, or perhaps I grow, and as I grow, the path becomes longer and also more interesting, which I think is what you're just talking about now, right? So
Yes.
even when a month later you recognize you failed, or where am I now? It's interesting because you're thinking about that and asking yourself that question. And
It's true. Although there's like two things, because one thing is when I was writing this, I felt that I had had these incredible experiences and that I really wanted to share them with everybody. And then when I'm trying to decide the interest and the point of view, I realize that if I write, look at all these wonderful things that happened to me, this is going to be so boring for me and for others. And so I say, no, but what didn't work, you know? And that's what I was looking for. And in doing that, and that comes when I decide to talk to Silo, because I think who really cares about my experience? The only person that really cares about the minutiae in my life is my mother, you know? Who cares? If I ate a banana. So I was thinking, who could possibly be interested in the details? And I thought, Silo. And also, he's the one that I'm trying to connect with, you know?
yes, right.
But what surprised me is that as I was writing this and I was being really honest, the way I feel about my experience changed. It's almost as if I had it detached from my experience and I could look at it and say, but this is beautiful. You know, things didn't work. You can't say, hey, no, you can't do that. But this other thing is beautiful. And maybe it's more beautiful than what you were trying to achieve.
Yes. You said it's a constant awakening toward integration, reconciliation, unity. In fact, the memory of this process is so extraordinary, so simple and profound that I am willing to keep on trying until I can habit the spaces of love, of inspiration, of being truly awake, my real home. you said it beautifully there. I mean, it's what you're describing right here.
You know, a saint came over me.
You can't remember it. No, but it's beautiful. You know,
I wrote that.
you did.
I must have been possessed. But it's true. But it's true. And I want to add a dimension because while I was writing that, it's very mental. No, so it,
Yeah.
But then something happened to me in Mikebuda, which was really interesting. We have a friend in Mikebuda who is having, you know, serious health issues, which is Monica. And she is a lovely person, and it's very easy to love her. And so we were doing a well-being, and she was close to me. And then while I was doing the well-being, I remembered something that I read in a piece of paper that supposedly is handwritten by Silo. And it's advice on how to do the asking. And so he says, asking is uniting the image of that which we need to how we will feel in the future, to the sensation, no, the feeling that we will have. And so I had a push from the higher plane, which made me say, I'm going to ask for Monica, and I am going to experience the relief that I feel that she is fine, which is a paradox because in the ceremony of well-being service that he does in Attigliano, he says, I ask and I don't care about the result.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't care about the result. I care about how I'm going to feel because he says, you know, I wish how I wish. And so if I feel this wish, because I wish for her to be well, you know, when we do the asking, we ask for the el cumplimiento, I don't know how it is in English.
We're asking for what we'd like for this person, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, in the service at the end, when you do the asking, he says, with this force that we have received, let us concentrate our minds into the fulfillment.
Well, what we truly need.
Exactly. So what you're doing is you're putting the energy in the image that this is fulfilled.
Yeah.
And what Silo is saying in Attigliano is take away all the tension, you know, take away, but what if it isn't? And what if it, when will it be? No. Take away all that and just keep the emotion. Yeah. And so I did this and I felt this incredible emotion, this incredible love. And I said, this is very interesting. So I continued doing this. No? So in the beginning, I'm doing this. And after I do it, I think, wow, this is great. Imagine how lovely it is when it happens. And then I say, well, maybe it won't happen. Maybe it's just a dream. And I say, but who cares? This is so wonderful. And they say, maybe it's happening because she died and you're in the well-being and she's dead. And I said, who cares? This is so wonderful. And then say, maybe you died. And all the time, I'm like, who cares if it's in a dream, if it's in reality, if it's before, if it's later, and these are the final words of the path. He says, do not feel lonely in your village, in your city. And he talks about taking your intention, because he says loneliness is the feeling of the abandonment of intention. You have been abandoned by the intentions of the other. And what you do, you don't get resentful, you don't cry, you don't complain. You take your intention and you make it grow. And as it grows, it starts taking over and it overcomes the space and the time. The intention becomes so strong that it doesn't matter whether the other person is reciprocal, whether they deserve it, whether it's gonna, all of this ceases to matter. And then the second one is, do not imagine that you're enchained, because this intention has grown so powerful that it frees you. In a really strange way, it frees you from the fulfillment of the intention because it is already fulfilled somehow. This connection with your best intentions towards the other, with life, with the meaning of life, this can become so strong that your beliefs about death change. Because it says, do not imagine that with your death, the loneliness will become eternal. And that's what happens to me. You know, I feel, oh my God, I'm going to die. And I have a sensation of the conscience being aware somehow that, you know, that I exist. But I'm
and that you're alone.
forever. But what I realized is that I was always expecting or looking for someone to take me out of that state. But actually, the way out of that state comes from inside of me. It comes from
Yeah.
my intention. It comes from, and that's why he says, if you believe that life ends in death, everything is incoherent, disintegrates. But if
Yep.
you don't believe, you have to make an effort. And the effort might be just to peek, just to say, okay, let me take a look, and that is enough. But it's always building on the intention inside of you, that you
Yes.
allow it to grow and that you don't allow anything to
Disintegrate it. I think in the Inner Lucky, it talks about the inversion of the growing stream of life. And the contradiction does that to all the
Yes.
doubt, uncertainty, fear, the great enemies of humanity, all those things that he talks about invert the growing stream of life.
And so maybe like from when I wrote the comments to now, I realized, and this was also something that I experienced because I had already an inkling of this thing, because I used to live in Italy and then I went to live in Chile. And then, after a while that I was living in Chile, everybody's life, my friends, my family, everybody's life went on without me. It didn't stop. I wasn't there anymore. And everybody was happy and thriving without me. And I have to tell you the truth, there was a moment where I felt abandoned. I thought, nobody cares, they picked up their lives. And I remember that I referred to this sentence, and I started asking, because he says, ask for yourself and your loved ones. He doesn't say ask for yourself and those in need. He says for your loved ones, because your loved ones are the tricky ones. They're the ones that are going to make you fret. They're the ones that are going to make you angry. They're the ones that are going to push your buttons. So if you are able to cultivate and nourish the affection, the love for the others, no matter what they do, because, everybody totally forgot about me. But I said, who cares? I love these people. I don't want to forget that I love them. And that after maybe 2 or 3 weeks that I was doing this, I didn't feel lonely anymore. And I didn't feel abandoned. And I was actually quite happy that everybody was doing well. And I felt the love. And I totally came back to myself. And nobody had to change for me to feel connected.
Yeah, you didn't have to get a confession out of them.
No, and I didn't need confirmation. And so in this experience with Monica, which is, she's in a very special situation, it kind of like brought this understanding that the love is eternal, which was clear to me for my very, very loved ones. I mean, I feel that, I feel my grandfather died when I was 17, and I feel his presence, his protection for me. It's as if he's alive today. But the people that, are not your family, I thought, how much can I really care about them? How connected am I really to them? And I can be very, very connected if I do, the work, which is to wish them well and to wish them to rejoice in their well-being.
Yes. Lovely. Well, I'll just read that last little bit again. I can inhabit the spaces of love, of inspiration, of being truly awake, my real home. And
I got the love down. Now I need the others. I got the love down, and now I need the
we're sound inspired today and very awake, so.
Maybe because I'm talking to you, a corroborating effect with my psychism.
Do you work with the path still every day?
Yes, of course.
Consciously or just co-presently?
Well, if you remember, I think the first time we talked, I told you that this is my year of the sacred.
Yes, you did. Yes.
So this year, I took all the things that helped, and this was one of the major ones, and I integrated them into my daily life. but very, very little. It's not that I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time. But what happened is that this year I tried because I like to experiment,
Yes.
especially experiment with things that Silo said, you should do this or you should try that. If I'm going to be coherent and he's my guide, let me try. And so now I have, instead of doing something before I wake up and something before I go to sleep, I do something throughout the whole day. Before I wake up, when I
Yes.
wake up, in the middle of the morning, when I have lunch, for lunch.
And can you share what you do? Is it a
Yes.
specific technique?
Yes. Well, I'm going to share it, but you see if you want to share it with others because I don't want anybody to be discouraged or to think I'm crazy, but I'm loving it. So this was like the best
Okay.
idea that I had in my life, but remember that I was in a very special moment. So this is what I do. I wake up in the morning. The principles are 12, which is
Yep.
easy, but I transformed the path into 12 as well. There are certain sentences that I did them together.
Combine them.
Yes. So I start with the path. Actually, I think of the sentence of the path of the month and then of the principle of the month every morning.
Okay.
And then I read 2 pages of Complete Works 1 and 2. And that has been maybe the thing that I've enjoyed the most this year because I read them. It's not that I study them, but just being exposed to it makes me
Yeah.
so much more intelligent, not
Yeah.
intelligent in a practical way that I'm smarter, but just that I feel that I wake up and I'm kind of like psyched to be
Yes.
alive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't really know why, especially now that I'm reading psychology too. First thing in the morning, it's not exactly, but it doesn't matter because I enjoy it. I get out of bed and like, wow, this life is so interesting. There is so much to learn. And then I do my practice, I write, and then I do an asking to be able, because like what I'm trying to experience with the message right now is the fact that I had kind of like a failure because everything I plan comes from my system of tensions. I'm tense because of certain things and I plan accordingly. So I said, no, I want to try to do something differently, something that I had tried before, but then I kind of got scared when it happened. Silo said somewhere, we answer to those who ask and we go where we are invited. And I never give anybody the chance to ask anything or to invite me because I'm always so proactive. I don't know. I'm gonna stop. I want to try to stop and wait for people to ask me. The other time I did it, I had problems because it's a loss of control. No, because
Yeah.
you're not controlling. I had all these things. I implemented them. First one thing, then another, then another. And this one, I started being able to do it in June, which is really ask that I am aware of when people are asking me or inviting me and that I am able to respond. And then at the end of the day, I do first a simple meditation. All of this, I do it very teeny tiny. I'm not supposed to get it right. I'm not supposed to do it well. If I don't feel like doing it, I don't do it. No pressure at all.
Yes.
Just enjoying the things that have helped me and that have given meaning. So this is the attitude. And so I do a teeny meditation, which is basically, where did I fuck up during the day and what did I learn? Like, that's exactly how it is, Like every day I will do a major boo-boo, and
Oh,
disconnect. And then it's like, okay, let's look at the boo-boo and what can we learn from this? And this has been also very positive. One wouldn't think so, but it has. And then finally, the last thing I do is that I look the moments where I gave thanks because I realized that I am much better at asking than at recognizing. And sometimes I recognize the moment when I'm feeling free and joyful and I can give thanks, but sometimes I don't. And so after I look at the boo-boo, I say, okay, but what were the moments of the day that made life worth living? And there always are. The last thing I learned this last week, and I found it so interesting that there were 2 days. There was one day where I was so inspired and doing all these things. There are certain moments where there are a lot of coincidences because you're kind of putting all your resources out there. And so one day I was like, wow, this was such an incredible day. And look at these extraordinary things that happened. And the day after sucked, it was like terrible. It's full of accidents, and I did a bunch of stupid things, and I was like terrible. But because it was Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday, I realized that on the day that was marvelous, actually a lot of bad things happened, but I didn't even notice them. And on the day that was terrible, a lot of good things had happened, but I didn't give them any credits. And so actually most of the days have good things and bad things. And what changes is which ones we are stressing, like a balance. We're giving more weight to one, more weight to, and then there are some days which really suck and some days which are really, but those are the exceptions. Yes. And so at the very end of the day, I look for these moments, which is how I could understand that there are light and dark kind of come together. And then again, I close with the principle and the path, and I go to sleep.
Lovely.
It's kind of crazy.
But you really are capturing the thing that I said. The only thing I remember is do not let your life pass by without asking yourself, who am I and where am I going? Don't let a day pass by without giving an answer to yourself about who you are and where you're going. You're really doing that work there.
True. And I think that it doesn't matter because I am like this. I am diffuse. I am dispersed. I like doing a lot of different things. And, this is what corresponds to me. But it's exactly like you said. If you just ask yourself, who am I? Where am I going? That's enough. If you just do an asking, that's enough. If you just reflect on what's happening to you, that's enough. But if you really want to have fun, do everything all at once.
Well, Isabel, this has been really lovely. Do you have any final words you'd like to sign off with for this lovely work you did? Has Silo been speaking to you?
Well, no, he didn't speak to me as I would like him to. For me, Silo is his doctrine, and taking little bits and pieces every day, I think that it's my
The lovely idea. You just read a couple of pages a day.
But I want to just close off with one thing, which I think it's important, and I didn't write it, which is the final thing that I want to say is I want to borrow from the Day of the Winged Lion, even though it's not in Phil's message, but what I feel is important is actually expressed very well there. When people see the winged lion, when humanity sees the winged lion, what changes is the way they feel about each other, the way we feel about it. It's not that they speak languages, they become superhuman, they become bionic. They feel for each other. And so ever since I met Silo's teaching with the humanist movement, I have been with others who have taught me, who have challenged me, who have gotten on my nerves and pushed my buttons and shared their experiences and given me affection and hope. So even though I talk about my experience is a tiny part of a kaleidoscope of many people. And I am very fortunate because I speak different languages. And so I have met an incredible mosaic of beautiful, giving, selfless, hardworking, funny, inspiring. And it's thanks to them that I write to Silo, but it's thanks to them that I have something to write about. A lot of these people are applied to Red Bluff Park in California because the first time that I felt that reality had volume, I was in Red Bluff. It was there that I said, oh, look at this, this is interesting. And I wonder this person, what are his circumstances? And I started seeing things as not bidimensional. So this is what I want to close off with. And I would love to listen to your poem.
Okay, and I think it's the I exist because you are the winged lion, right? That's a lovely way to end it. Well, this is just in the theme of the path. It's called A Walk from Rilke. My eyes already touch the sunny hill, going far beyond the road I have begun. So we are grasped by what we cannot grasp. It has an inner light, even from a distance, and changes us, even if we do not reach it, into something else, which, hardly sensing it, we already are. A gesture waves us on, answering our own wave, but what we feel is the wind in our faces.
Wow. The truth speaks through the mouth of the poets.
Yes, and he's another path kind of meditation,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you're very good at that, Ken. I am so surprised in all these years you have exposed to me a quantity of poets that I didn't know existed. That all the poems that you share are beautiful, but some of them they touch you inside, and you're like, wow. And I don't know how you are able to find so many gems because it's a lot of poems.
Well, it's that old, I hope it's appropriate to say this, but sometimes Jenna would say, I had to kiss a lot of frogs to find my way. So, in fact, sometimes I really annoy Jenna because we have a fantastic library system where I live, and it's walking distance. And I love going to that library because Frank Lloyd Wright built the building.
Oh.
And I call it our park of study and reflection, because the library is in a dome and it has a triangular monolith and it has a fountain and it's got all the elements of the park, right? So I can walk to the library, and it's called the Marin County Free Library. So most libraries are free, but I love that's part of the name. And so they have this great poetry section. And the other thing is, we have a college and a university that is part of the library system. So you can get an amazing access to books, and they'll deliver them to your local library. And so this is part of my path. It's like a circular route. I walk from our house down this path along the railroad tracks to the library, and then around the lagoon to the library, and then back home. And it's halfway there when you get to the library, of course, because I'm going to walk back. And then I'll come home with 6 books. I just did it this week. You see the poems. So I got a Mary Oliver book, a William Stafford book, and a Langston Hughes book. But what annoys Janet the most is I'll be in bed going like this. Flip, flip, flip. I know right away if
Yes.
the poem, right? I can
Yes,
tell
yes.
immediately. So I kissed a lot of poem frogs. And a lot of those writers I love, half of them, more than that, 3/4 of them, I would never send it out. And it's unfair to the poet, really, because I'm looking just for something very special about the poem. And I totally use my intuition for it. And so it helps me. Let me read it again from the path. It says, learn to recognize the signs of the sacred within you and around you. That's the step I work with, or I try to work with in this, even in going to the library and coming back and the whole experience. But particularly when I'm reading the books, I'm looking for the signs of the sacred in there. One of my favorite poets, Robert Bly, and
Yes.
I mean, because I did this translation
Yes.
of the one I read you, and he called it leaping poetry, where you have to leap. In our terminology, you've got to get in the third quadrant. You've got to jump into the profound or into the sacred.
Yes.
And, CeeLo uses leap a lot, like leap over your suffering. I like that he uses that word because I felt there was some influence of Kierkegaard there, because Kierkegaard talks about the leap of faith. But Kierkegaard's kind of leaping, I think, towards God or something, whereas CeeLo leaping into the growing stream of life. That's what I feel CeeLo is always inviting us to leap into that, get in that river. That's going to take you somewhere really interesting, which is what I felt your chat today did. The path took us somewhere really interesting to do. We should all appreciate that. Thank you for it. Celebrate each other. You know,
Yes.
flowers we can throw at each other. So maybe that's a good space to end in, right?
Wonderful, Ken.
Well, I'm going to miss you.
Yes, me too. I'm going to produce something else. Or you can produce something and I can interview. Oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to translate into Italian your booklet of one of your booklets that you sent. You sent me 2 booklets that you wrote. And I'm going to translate one of them into Italian. If you can send me, if you have them in Word so that I can do it more quickly.
Yeah.
One I think is learning to see. Is it learning to see?
Yes.
Yes.
See. That one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to translate one of these and then you can share your experience.
Okay.
Yeah, we can switch to roles. I don't think I'm going to be such a good host as you are, but I would love to know because you are such a creative person and you're so capable of sharing your inspiration. You are creative, but that's not what I meant. I meant your ability to capture this inspiration, and this is inspiration which is deeper or more spiritual or more beautiful, that is more attached to the world of meanings. No, and you're so capable of sharing this in a very generous and open and horizontal way because you're not an elitist at all. And so, you know, and then
I'm very working class.
Yes, which is what we, horizontal, no? And also this thing that which you said about the signs of the sacred, which you mentioned, I remember when I met you, you told me that this poem was also something that during the day helped you.
Yeah, right.
To more. So, you know, maybe you can share all that because that's part of what inspired me when I said, I mean, I really meant it, that my experience is outcome of the way I process the experience of many other people.
Yes.
Including yours.
That book, you know, all the words are CeeLo's and all the pictures are Rafa's.
Really?
Yes, they are. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
They're just quotes from CeeLo that I thought illustrated, for me, each step of the discipline. But
maybe because it's in English.
don't sound like that. So I didn't write it, but I love talking about it, actually.
Perfect.
You know, I tried to do one. It was the 12 steps of the disciplines using the songs of the Beatles. I had a Beatles song for each step.
Oh, did you do it?
I did, but I thought this is too cheesy to send out, you know.
Well, I'm very curious.
I'll send it to you so you see
Thank you.
play the songs and see if they fit, you know.
Good.
Okay, well, thank you again.
And thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Me too. It's been wonderful. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording here.